Being 9 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And first order of business is the approval of the agenda. I'd like to make a couple of changes on the consent agenda. Item number 3, where it says Jessica Reed's social worker leave effective August 27th, it should be the 25th. Then there's a request to have initiate a search for a CP SW. I'm not real sure what the SW stands for. Social. Guess I should have figured that out. Anyways, request to do that. I see John over here to talk about that. So. Otherwise, no changes that I'm aware of.
We're talking about the agenda part now, right? Right. Consent agenda.
Right.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with that change.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the agenda with the 2 changes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item is the approval of the previous minutes, that being the board meeting of June 22nd, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the previous minutes from June 22nd. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Any public comment? See too many people on the screen. Nobody in the audience is making a public comment. So we will move forward. We have a 9:30 closed session. Since it's only 9:03, we can move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda consisting of rehiring Jamie Acker as a drop site supervisor, 67-day casual employee, hire Amy Silling as a probationary clerk type 1, step 1, effective July 7th. Accept the resignation of Jessie Reed, social worker lead, effective August 25th. Thank her for her 15 years of service to the residents of Houston County. And also to request to initiate a search for a CP social worker for health and human services.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Made, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Down to action items. 1, Brian's not here. So number 2 is request approval for budget amendments. Carol, you are here.
Bob, I am online, so you know.
Brian is on.
Brian's here, okay. We'll move back to number 1. Consider approving the minutes of the My Energy distribution facility installation agreement and authorize Brian to do the signature for the county.
Yes.
Brian,
Good
you
morning,
got the floor.
Commissioner. Yeah, good morning, Commissioner. So what this agreement is for is the gas service to the new building. So it is the terms set by Minnesota Energy. I recommend approval of this so we can go ahead and get that line hooked up to that building. So, you know, the cost is estimated to be $0. If it's more than 75 feet of service line, it'll be $4.32 a foot. So it's a pretty minimal cost to the county.
You gotta have it, right?
And we need to have it.
I'll make a motion to go with My Energy distribution. It sounds like we need it, so I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve My Energy Distribution Facility Installation Agreement. Have Brian as the authorized signature. Further discussion?
Minnesota Energy, just for clarification on that.
Yeah, it's not. It's Minnesota Energy, not My Energy.
Oh. Minnesota Energy Distribution. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Brian. Carol, now we will move on to your request for approval of budget.
All right, so with the settlements of all the contracts and the non-union agreements for 2021, these are the budget amendments because nothing was budgeted for any adjustments for 2021. So this basically goes by department at the staffing levels that we're currently at, with the exception of the county attorney and the environmental services. They're basically staying the same for right now because we're working on, either using a contract for an attorney or, the staff there, and in environmental services, there's some things going on. So I didn't want to reduce the budget and then have to come back and say, yeah, we need more now. So we'll address those later. And Health and Human Services, that's a little bit more of an allocation process. So Heidi will get those and we'll adjust those when we're ready. That's approximately $95,000 additional. So the total is like the 216,000 I've given you in the sheet. I had sent you a spreadsheet a few weeks ago showing what the cost would be. So it's close to that. Then the additional sheet is actually taking the administrator's budget, reducing it to zero. Now there was reductions in the actual salary, but moving part of that to the commissioner's professional services where the CETA contract was being paid from. So that's a move there. And then we just had another one, the sheriff's office, the vehicles purchased should have been in the vehicles lease line. So we moved that around.
It's not an actual change, it's just a location.
Right. Yep. So
But that helps.
it just works better now that we're starting the budget report or budgeting to have these numbers in there. That way you have a better idea. Of where they're at
This
this year. So I would request approval of these changes.
Make a motion to approve the amendments.
motion has been made to approve the amendments. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Further discussion? Is any of this able to be allocated as far as the dollars from COVID funds? Or is none of this got anything to do with it?
Not this. This is more using the carryover from last year's CARES money.
Right.
That was figured in.
Right.
We knew that we would be using that money to cover salary increases this year.
Further discussion?
Well, some of it'll help with the administrative budget. Difference would help with at the bottom line, right?
It did help with the bottom line,
Yeah.
but it didn't reduce that 200.
No, I understand that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It did. It helped with that. Bringing it down to that amount.
This may not be the place to talk about it, but do we have any guidance yet from this next amount of federal money on where it can be utilized?
The final interim rule will be adopted July 16th. But in the meantime, there are, they call them the FAQ documents, which really go into a lot of detail about where other people are asking questions or other entities are asking questions about, well, would it be able to be used for this? And I can find that and send it to you, and it'll be a good document, because between then and the 31st, we're going to have to make decisions whether we're going to apply any of our money that we received to prior expenses, because it can go back to March 3rd expenditures. And I don't know that we really had anything, unless there's a determination made that that water main loop could possibly be used. There are for salaries in the Health and Human Services Department that weren't covered by other grant funding. So we could allocate a portion to cover that.
How about the highway?
Highway.
Well, what Brian brought up about being,
Oh, the reduced funding?
Yeah.
And that'll be something that we look at going forward
okay,
and not.
that
what we've
not
done
take
in
away
the
back
past.
to March, right?
Yes.
Go back to March, that has to be decided by the end of July.
We have to do our first reporting by July 31st. Or something like that. Just to say.
Can we go back? After the 31st of July, can we still defer some
We
of the
could
money
if
back?
it was, determined that, yeah, we missed that and.
So we're not handcuffed from that perspective.
Send me a copy of that. What you're gonna send to me.
Oh, I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
And they update them weekly with, different questions that have been submitted and the answers from the treasurer. To say, yes, you can, or you can't. That's a stretch.
Out of gray areas.
Yeah, that's been great. Mhm.
Remind you of the gray water situation in Fillmore County. So we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. So, since we're moving right along and it is not yet 9:30 for our closed session. Brian's still here, so the MnDOT District 6 County Outreach. Brian, you want to address that?
Yes, so MnDOT's District 6 Planning Director emailed myself and sent it also to Jeff Babinski, which is no longer here at the county. Wanted to know if we wanted MnDOT to come down and present their 2022-2031 Capital Highway Investment Plan to the county board. So they did this the last couple of years. So they were reaching out and asking the county if they want them to present the updated plan again this year. And if so, they have a few different questions to follow up on that. So if you want to start by talking about that first. So I don't know if I should tell them yes or no.
I think it'd be a good idea.
I agree.
By all means.
agree.
Okay, would you like to do it in person or virtually?
I like it in person.
It's nice in person, but for them to come down from Rochester, if you're here in person, Brian, to handle it, I'm okay with them doing it from Rochester as long as we get the information on the board.
Yeah, we got these.
Visuals.
But if everybody wants them to come down in person, it's their tax dollars at work. I'm okay with it.
No, I think as long as Brian's here, we can be, they
Yeah,
could be on
I'm
there.
fine with that.
I think that worked for me.
You hear that, Brian?
I did.
By consensus, we're pretty much okay with, if you're here representing the county and they do it online, if we can see what their presentation is on our TV screens here, we're okay if they do it from Rochester.
Okay, I will let them know that. Do you have a time of year that you'd like them to have them do it? Do you want them to do it during the summer or sometime, later on into the fall? or no preference?
Leave it up to Brian.
Whenever, it doesn't matter to me.
None of us care.
Is there anything additional that you'd want to discuss with them in addition to the 10-year plan?
I'd be interested in a roundabout if they're still considering it for Brownsville area.
Okay.
Only 3 hits up state highway there.
3 and 26.
Mhm.
I'd be interested if that, any of that LRP funding is gonna happen again, or how that's gonna be handled. Of course, that's a not 10-year period, isn't it? But if it happens,
Okay.
I think we're all mostly interested in Houston County.
Okay.
So Brian, on that LRIP, Mount Prairie was the only one that got accepted, correct, for the county?
Correct.
Was there like 4 other applications?
Yeah, there are 4 or 5 other applications. So when they released the results, they also the applicants that were not selected were supposed to be on that list in ranking from top to bottom on where they fell for funding. So depending on what happens with the next LRIP funding, if they use the previous applications and fund some additional ones based on that, we might have one more get selected depending on how deep that would go into the funding. Some of the ones doesn't appear to rank very high, but I haven't seen the actual scoring results.
So the fact that Mount Prairie was applied before for this funding, that, do you think that gave them a leg up a little bit, or a higher ranking?
I think going through the process and knowing, maybe having a little better idea of what was being looked for, maybe helped them out. You know, I think that, and I've actually encouraged one of the cities that applied to apply again if they have funding again. And I think, you know, the more you stick to it, I think the better the odds you have of getting funded. So I don't think it hurt them.
When I talked to Caledonia, they said they were like 54th or something like that. In the low 50s someplace of the ranking.
Okay.
I also told them that they should reapply. It would be a good thing. And if there's anything that should be adjusted, you could maybe give them some advice. I think you looked at it in the first place, didn't you?
I did not see their actual application. Provided a letter of support for it, but we did not see the application itself.
Well, I personally think that we should revisit that criteria for letters of support, because there's a list of 8 things that the county, because it has to go, the county has to sponsor it, and they got 8 criteria that you have to do. And we didn't want to go that far. We basically just did the first 1 or 2, but I think with some ways of protecting ourselves, I think we could do more to help these townships and cities get this award money, but still have our backside protected, you might say, as far as liability. I don't know if you want to revisit that or not, Brian, but I think we should look at that again for next time around, myself.
Yeah, I would think that if we're going to have as much interest in the LRIP plan or funding sources going forward as what we had this time, we should definitely look at that some more. Historically, we've had at most one community that would apply, whether it was one of the cities or a township, but it was pretty minimal, and the county never got selected, or none of the entities in the county got selected. This time, with having a lot more interest, and it looks like there's gonna be a lot more interest this next time as well, that, yeah, I think we should definitely look at it some more and maybe talk to Sam and figure out, protection on the county side and what we should
Right.
do and can
I
do.
had
for
a
'em.
recent conversation with one of the townships, and they said they would be willing to sign off on a, for liability reasons that, that we're not held liable for certain things or whatever, so I think there's a way to work that out. For Mountain Prairie, we sponsored the whole thing. We went through the whole thing, so, and they got it. So I think it's an important process to do for them to get it.
One other question, have you looked at the state's budget? I know they've added some money to the infrastructure highway and whatnot. Is any of that money going to go towards LRIP funding?
Yeah, so that's being looked at. It's also being looked at if more money does go to LRIP, how do they distribute that money? Do they go through a new selection process, or do they take the previous applicants, based on the previous rankings? So they don't know yet, but they are talking about it.
Okay. Anything else for Brian?
Yep. So the last question that MnDOT asked is, do we value the draft plan information presented? Is there any question and answer portion, or is the question and answer portion more valuable to the county? Do we value both portions of that? So do you like listening to MnDOT talk, or do you like having that Q&A portion?
I don't mind listening to them give an explanation. Q&A is important too, but the initial explanation is okay by me. Anybody else?
I wouldn't mind having this.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Also,
I like where we can ask them a question about it. I've been asking them about Brownsville for years.
You should be prepared for questions.
Mhm.
Usually think of one during their
Okay.
presentation, so.
Stirs up something.
So is this, they want the questions before the presentation so that they come with the answers? Is that the idea?
I would think that I would prefer that, and I'll give them a heads up on what these questions are. The questions there at the Brownsville Roundabout and LRIP, and that way they have a heads up. They would prefer that. Questions during the presentation or right afterwards would work too.
So they want them in advance.
They prefer them that way. That way they know what the answer is. Don't get anything thrown at them that they're not familiar with. So.
I'm sure we can come up with some questions, but like Eric just commented, that sometimes we listen to something and a question pops up during our conversation. They should be prepared for both.
Right.
I think what they're probably getting at is if they got some pointing questions that we wanted to ask for sure that we know of, like Teresa's thing in Brownsville.
Sure.
And then they could look that up and see if it's on their schedule or whatever.
Be more prepared.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean I don't think we can still throw them a winger here now and then.
There's going to be questions when you're talking. So
Yeah.
both ways.
We've already asked initial questions, and then when they do their presentation, we'll come up with additional questions as necessary.
Very good.
As we decide what we want to know.
Yep.
Okay,
That sounds good. Thanks a lot.
thank you, Brian. So we got 5 more minutes before our closed session. State of emergency ending. Allison, you got a report on that?
Well, I just put this on here because the state of emergency is ending. I sent you guys some information, just some reminders about meetings and being in person, that kind of thing. And then I'm wondering if we want to take down on the website the county's emergency since the state's is ending.
I think we should.
I agree.
I mean, there's
Yes.
no reason for us to, now, does that need to be an official action? I mean, on the agenda for next meeting? Or can we do it now? I'm sure, well,
It was an official action when
yep,
you declared it.
so it should be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Or can we move this to an action item now?
Because it hasn't been.
Well,
It hasn't been published. I don't think.
Yeah, why don't we just move it for the next meeting and,
Okay.
and get all our stuff, ducks in a row of what we need to do.
Kind of sounds like it's a foregone conclusion, but from
Consensus is.
We'll officially, okay.
we'll make it official.
To coincide with the state's ending of theirs.
And then this is not related, but Donna, can you hear me? Can you tell us who all is attending virtually? Because we can't see everyone on the screen today.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, yep, we've got Mary Beth's Recorder's Office, John Puglisa, and that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So why isn't it on the screen? Is that
I-
different?
Donna, does that have to do with your view? Does it look different to you today or not?
No, it looks the same.
Okay, that
No.
must be here then. So we'll just make a note next time to maybe change the way we see the screen so we can see everyone.
Sure.
Okay.
And then Brian was on, of course, but he's off now, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now we see John.
Say, commissioners,
There we go.
with regard to the emergency declaration, I just went to the website and what you had revised says that you were following CDC and MDH and governor's executive orders, and that the temporary measures would stay in effect until the end of the state and/or federal emergency declarations. So I think waiting till next week to make it official doesn't put you in any disadvantage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Okay. Our state of emergency. In 2 minutes, we're going to close session, so that gives us time to clear the room. Put everybody in the closet or wherever they end up going to.
Kitchen, not
Make a
closet.
motion.
We need a motion to go
So we
into
need
it.
a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session. Second.
Motion made and seconded to go into closed session for the purpose pursuant to Minnesota statute 13B.03 subdivision 1B to discuss labor negotiations, including strategies or developments and discussion, review of the labor negotiation proposals. Pursuant to sections 179A.01 to 179A.25. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Right.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So after we have cleared the room and the screen, we will go into closed session. Entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
I'll make a motion to come out of closed session. Second.
Motion made and seconded to come out of closed session for the purpose that we had labor negotiation discussion. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Back in open session. Tess, can you give us some summary of what our closed session is?
Yes, the board met in closed session pursuant to Minnesota statute 13D.03 subdivision 1B. There was a general consensus to accept the proposed pay grid as proposed by DDA. To accept the pay grid as proposed by DDA for the purpose of negotiations.
Thank you.
Yep.
That takes care of that. So we'll move back to where we left off, and that will be on discussion items. Board updates and commission report seems to me to be kind of the same thing. So I'm gonna start with what I've got. I met with the townships the other last week. With regard to two things. One was the cell phone request. They had asked for $40,000 increase on their support to be used for wage purposes and whatnot. I talked to the Houston County Commissioner, or Houston County Township Board about this, and their opinion was that that's a pretty stiff increase. Libraries are important, and wages are necessary to keep people, just like we've talked about. But they thought the 40,000 was pretty excessive, and so they thought that 20,000 would be a more adequate number at least for next year's budget. Then we discussed the changes, possible or potential changes as far as the waste and recycle. And they like the waste and recycle program that we have in Houston County because it is a good program to keep the ditches clean and whatnot. Understanding that in looking at it, ways to reduce cost and ways to maintain service, they appreciate reducing cost, but would like the programs to stay the way they are, 5 sites, and the various types of things that we accept because it keeps the ditches clean and whatnot. So if there's things that we can do to reduce cost without changing the program dramatically, that was kind of their opinion as far as that's concerned. So I'll be meeting with Selco next week to talk about that with them. And forward after that meeting, I'll report to you what they had to say about that. The biggest thing about that particular change is it's kind of a pass through as far as the increase and that is carried over to the city properties in the county for the library purposes. So Chris, any city with a library, they have their own funding. Anything outside of the cities is where the $20,000 is. Right?
Well, that's the,
Plus I'd say
right, and that's where our donation of 163, well,
current price.
what would you call it? Probably same thing as we do for the county fair and all that. It's yep. But
So we pay 163,000 towards this library deal right now.
Correct.
In an appropriation.
an appropriation.
And they want $20,000 plus the raise.
They were asking for 40.
Asking for 40, here, what, a month ago? 6 weeks ago?
There was never, you didn't discuss with the townships about a fee, proposing a fee to the townships for this, a special fee or no?
Fee for the library?
Yep.
It would go on the tax. It would be an increase.
Well, I'm just thinking like if it was the same thing for the solid waste as a household fee.
Right. We didn't discuss it as a fee,
All right,
just an increase in the tax.
Yeah.
Fee discussion was only in the waste and recycling.
Well, I guess with that information, I feel too that the 5 sites is necessary. They're pretty well distributed at this time. Otherwise, people between halfway between Houston and Holco are not going to drive all the way to the Crescent or one way or the other. It's a tough call, but I have to agree with the township board or group that we want to keep our ditches clean, and we're doing a better job than other counties I've read with.
Well, I agree with you. We've got to keep them 5 sites. I would like to see the finance committee sit down with Amelia and Holly and maybe Daniel, her, and we need to go through this finances of this whole deal. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in there that we can tweak and make this get better. Because we haven't renewed any contracts for 4.5 years. And I mean, that's key on prices.
negotiating the contracts for our, and you know,
And
prices and.
just between us, Rick Franklin took his name off the cell phones last year. So they haven't been getting the job done. So I think we need to go in there as a finance committee and look this thing over, sit down, maybe bring Rick Frank in, pick this thing apart and see where we can tweak it and make it better. I don't know what you guys think of that idea, but that's my idea. If we want to get it straightened out, that's the best thing.
People that are-
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to evaluate that and look at our contracts, see what we're getting for our prices and what our expenses are. And go through it with a fine tooth comb.
What do you think, Dewey?
I think we need to adjust as we, there's a lot of, I guess I'm not familiar with the income part from the stuff that taken out, like the cardboard or whatever, if they give us much at all, how much impact on the different ideas. It's,
I just think it's something we gotta look at.
The rates we get are changing all the time.
Yeah.
What they're willing to pay for the recycled materials
unfortunate.
changes. The hauling contracts and whatnot, that's where you start making changes.
That's my suggestion.
So they didn't think like La Crescent Township where they got all those single stream recycling and garbage container, they paid for that. Other townships really didn't want to go that route.
Brownsville.
That was based on, not every township was there. Just based on the
Association.
six, the board, the six guys from the board, that was their. So Crescent has roadside, Brownsville's got roadside, Ison's got roadside, or curbside,
Mhm.
but they didn't want to see a change
In
in
the,
the service that we provide.
Brownsville's having lots of troubles.
Yeah.
They got garbage from Wisconsin and their tonnage is way up. So they got people bringing garbage from all over. They got a problem. I don't know what they're gonna do. I hear stories.
Well, your committee that you and Teresa are on for this solid waste thing, that's, are you continuing with that?
What?
Okay.
Absolutely.
And we should maybe put on for action items next month or next meeting would be the feedlot and the septic systems. Maybe we should think about moving them.
Well, that was going to be part of my report, is that we had a personnel committee meeting last week. And we met with Soil and Water, Dave Walter and Bob Scanlon and Jerry Wilkie to discuss the possibility of having Soil and Water take over feedlot inspections and possibly the sewer inspections also. They're willing to take that on. And I thought it was a good discussion. Amelia gave them some of the information of what they need to do. And I think it's what they're proposing and what Soil and Water wants to do is to take it all. That means do the reports and all the paperwork involved with it. And that's the way Fillmore County does it too. I had a discussion with them. And they do the same thing. The Fillmore County Soil and Water is doing that, and they're taking it all. And every year there's a report that we as a board look at and approve and sign off on. And that's what we could do here if we were to do the same thing. So I just think that was if we can get somebody that's willing to take on some work for us as the county, we should think that is a good thing. And it's local. It's our local soil and water service that would be doing it. So
Keep the money in the county.
that's where Eric and I were differing quite a bit because I felt that we were the responsible party. And we do it by, right now, Amelia is our interim. zoning, if we search for a new director, department head, she could apply for that. And then we could replace her with an environmental specialist, which is what she is by trade. We'd have 4 people in that office. We could keep the responsibility in the county where we sign off on it.
Thing is,
Then we would have enough people in that department,
well, we're gonna have a third person come in here.
but mainly the data entry and answer the phone.
Yeah.
She's not gonna be doing feedlots.
No, but if we had soil and water doing feedlots, which they already are doing feedlot work for new feedlots, consulting work, they're experienced in all this, and they know the farmers out in the area that they work with. They work with them on other issues of throughout the county as far as cost sharing on structures and everything else.
But
To me,
Diane
that'd
has been
be-
doing it for 5 years and does a good job.
Right, but she can't do it all. That's the thing.
Well, that's what I'm
That's
saying.
what we're looking at, is if we were to make Amelia the environmental services director, department head, she can't do feedlots, zoning and permitting now. She has to have somebody else.
And solid waste.
And soil and water could do that.
Take a little pressure off of her for sure. I mean,
Definitely. And we got to look at what we're going to do here. I mean, we're contracting that service out now. Winona County's doing the feedlots for us as of right now.
Just the inspection of the 25 that,
Yep. And that's what
but we still have to sign off on it.
the sign off, Teresa, is the report at the end of the year. This is the report. That's what she does to us now. Amelia brings the report. This is her report. We look at it and sign off on it.
But how do we
So-
know it was done right? I mean, how do we know that it was done right?
well, these are.
So
professionals.
they would have to do it right. Otherwise, MPCA would have a problem with it.
They're
So
all the federal government.
MPCA's problems will be with us,
Yes,
not with soil and water.
correct.
Because we're the responsible, the county is responsible.
I have confidence in our local soil and water board. They work with these grants all the time. They know how to get these done right because they work with, that's how they operate, is with grant money. So they have to report what they do on all their work and write it down and explain what they're doing to get in order to receive their grant. It'd be no different if they were to get the grant for the feedlot.
We
They
can't
would
give them
have-
our grant though.
Yes, we can.
The state gives us the option. So that's what us or the state.
We can use it towards
Feedlot
wages.
can get the grant through the state. It's from the state.
We can transfer the grant to the soil and water.
You're talking money. I'm talking responsibility.
The responsibility would be the soil and water to do the work, inspections, like Winona County. We're responsible for Winona County's work. How do we know they're not doing it right? We're gonna sign off on it. We're already taking in their assumption that they're doing it correctly, just like we're taking the assumption that G-Cube is doing their inspections correctly.
Yeah.
We are the final liability holder there. It'd be no different if soil and water, Houston County Soil and Water did the same thing that Winona County is doing right now.
The
So,
reason that we have GQ and Winona County, that was tentatively a temporary situation until we had brought back the staff in the county office to do the work. Not a permanent situation. We brought them on to help us out till we had the people that we needed to make our office whole again. We're down to 2 people where we used to have 5. Now we're talking about 4. Well, you're talking about putting it over to soil and water for septic, soil and water for feedlot. And I
Right.
understand that they work with all these farmers and whatnot around the county, but we're still the responsible party. The grant money from the state comes to us, we give that to soil and water.
Correct.
But we still are the responsible party.
right,
If there was a problem, it's
just like we're the responsible party for G-Cube and Winona County.
until such time as we
We get ours.
have our options available by hiring somebody in our soil and water offices to do the septic and the feedlot to help deal with that.
The problem with trying to hire sewer, and we actually had a bid out there for a hire for sewer inspections, and we didn't get one applicant. And Fillmore County's having the same trouble finding somebody for feedlot. We're not gonna be able to hire a feedlot person right off the street. We'd have to be experienced and train them. Here, we could have soil and water take over day one, and they have the training and the expertise to do it. And then we wouldn't have to worry about retaining that person to do it.
Well, we'd save health insurance, 401k, we'd save a lot by not having to hire somebody.
Right.
Get them to do it.
Well,
But I just wanted to bring forward the
not taking into
information.
consideration, whoever they have doing is gonna have health insurance, 401k too. They aren't doing it gratis, so we're gonna have to pay them, whether we pay them or pay ourselves.
It's gonna be in their bid no matter what.
Well, another thing to think about too is that there's gonna be another grant that's gonna go away here shortly, and that's the buffer grant, and that's the grant we use to hire Amelia with. And that's gonna be going away. So, you know,
The wages are getting-
they're supposed to be bringing the numbers forward on what all the grants and numbers and come up with a proposal here, so. I just don't understand the pushback of having local soil and water take over some of this work. I mean, we should be thankful that they even want to do that. I don't understand the pushback and what is,
Well, we might-
they're experienced in this. They know the work involved in it.
Well, if you're gonna hire the right guy, that might take us 6 months to a year.
Because I think Amelia's been doing a very good job for the last 5 years.
And no
She
one's-
just
I-
can't control.
That's
We're
what
not
She
arguing.
would-
I agree with you. Amelia has done a good job, but she can't do it all. This is a way to help alleviate some of the workload here.
We don't wanna burn her out. She's good at what she does, so let's try to keep her. That's my goal. We're gonna burn her out.
She doesn't even know if she really wants to do this zoning part.
Well, then we better
I
make
mean-
that decision. She wants to.
We're waiting to get some facts and figures as far as money too. What the difference would be with keeping our office with 4 people, which we're already down
We're
from
gonna have,
5
we're gonna have 3 here.
We're on to 3 starting.
tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Is the clerical person, that's what we approved today, the clerical person to help with the record keeping, the filing and the phones and what have you.
Right.
Well, I hope they.
We have nobody, we haven't agreed to hire somebody with any expertise or that needs the training to do these things that we're talking.
Well, we tried to hire someone with expertise in the sewer inspections and nobody applied.
Because they have to be certified and you have to have.
Well, and you
continuing
gotta have
education.
to find a person to do it, and nobody applied to do it. We have somebody at the soil and water guys that are willing to take it on.
That's a no-brainer. So,
What was Rick Frank's involvement here when we put him on as a temporary to assist? What was that?
He's certified. for-
But they're not using it.
Well, he hasn't, well, I don't.
Hasn't been
He
requested.
was not brought, the idea wasn't that he's gonna come and do few lots or come and do septics. He was just on an advisory. basis.
Okay.
Just
Well,
to help him
they could have them go out and do soil verification on the septic if they wanted to.
That wasn't what he was.
You know, he was at their disposal for anything they needed.
I was under the impression he was on an advisory basis, not to do it. That was my
Well,
thought.
I know he would do the septics if we help call him, if they would call.
Well, I think we need to find out that as Teresa just said, is that we're going through we went from 5 to 4, but of course, we only had 3
We went
right
from
now.
5 to 2.
And now we're back up to 3 or soon, so we just need to get all our ducks in a row before, and again, this is just reporting, not discussing or voting, and so.
Right.
So we need to,
He said there's numbers coming, so.
Yeah.
wait to see what the numbers are.
let's see what it looks like. Moving money from one side to the other could do more harm than good, or we don't know. I'd like to see that.
Anyway, that was the end of my report.
All right.
We'll start on that and this, that was great.
Oh, yeah, we had the county shop meeting the other day. Couple twists, couple turns, probably be all right when we get all said and done. There's a couple new things that popped up that we didn't know about at the time. I think the one was like a $22,000, right, Eric?
Yeah, it was the records room and the tech room somehow got switched around for the fire dry versus wet. So that created a change order of 33,000, but then if we were to retain the wet in the tech room and have the records room dry, it would be 22,000, but it's a little upsetting because they were told that this is what that they were told correctly which one we wanted it, which way we wanted it, but for somehow it wasn't bid out that way. So hence the change order. Now, is it really 22,000? If it would have been done bid correctly, probably not, but we don't know.
So this is a oversight by the design people currently? That-
Well, I can't say for sure exactly where to place the responsibility. If it's the Weezer Brothers for the bid, the management, the construction manager part of it. I haven't delved into it that far yet, but
then they talked maybe about making it all one room, but that might be costly too.
yeah, and that's not going to work. I talked to Andy about that too, and won't work. He'd rather see it separated just because, you know, you get papers and everything flying around. It just, yeah. And I think the wall is already up too, so.
Pretty much screwed that.
Yeah,
Okay.
but he was fine with keeping it wet with the extra different sensors in it. So it doesn't, you know, because there is heat in there, so you don't want a real sensitive sensor to go off on it. So, because that's where all the in the other tech rooms in this throughout the county here, they're all wet too. So he was fine with that. That would save us $10,000. There's another potential change order coming too on the soils surcharging over there on the hoop structures. But we haven't, they did it different. They come back with hourly rates and stuff like that, and they didn't compute it into, it didn't match up with how they bid it. So Fraser, so we're going to look at that closer, and Weezer's, they just got it, so they had to go through it with them and go. So that's not a done deal yet either, and we're going to try to negotiate more on that too. So, and I have no idea what the difference in money is either, but
Just to remove soils and put in,
they had to remove a portion of the soils over there.
they'll bring in.
Yep.
So,
Plus, it's been pointed out to me that we could have done that differently too, as far as how the building is faced and not had the two levels, because right now the salt shed is down lower than the rock and sand shed. So they're going to have to go in and get the salt and come uphill to fill. So that could have been, but it's too late now, but that's been pointed out to me.
At Weezer's? No.
No, by some of the other guys that work there.
You that aren't happy with it.
Well, yeah, it could have been facing in a different direction.
some easy lessons.
Yeah,
Because anytime you gotta crawl up a hill with a load of salt in a bucket, that's hardly any equipment. Going up and down the slabs like that.
Nothing we can do at this point.
It's a done deal. Yeah.
Yep.
For all practical purposes.
yep. But these meetings every 2 weeks are good. We get to, you can stay on top of stuff like this, you know.
Well,
So-
we're getting down to the nitty end here, and there's all kinds of little tweaks now. We gotta find one person. to do it. We got Furniture or office equipment, all of a sudden they had it, now we don't have it. Now we're going here and buying new stuff. So I give them credit, they're working hard at it.
Refurbished. Yeah.
I mean, they're doing all they can to keep it down, but I mean, you get these things with weezers, but they come up with, you can't have much control over. But we have saved in a few spots, in a few places, so.
It was brought up about the installation. They just got a blast email here last week, just before the meeting, that the installation is being pushed back 6 weeks from their supplier, and they were guaranteed this installation. All of a sudden, there's a shortage, so. But they're gonna keep working on it, and they got some, but they don't have it all, so. And we were afraid that we were gonna have material issues, you know.
And I think they plan on having it pretty well cleaned up down there by the fair for people parking.
Yeah, they're already planning for the fair, getting stuff moved around and move some fencing so we can have a little more room for the fair goers and parking and stuff.
It's coming.
Brian brought
nice.
it up to bring that we gotta start planning for that, so.
Well, Bill, it's the 15th of July and this one's half.
From a fair point of view, we aren't really in the fairground area.
Yeah, we took.
Well, we took that handicap parking spot away, you know.
We'll get some of
The
it.
fencing is into that.
Okay.
And the portion of the driveway to get back to the back barns.
Yeah.
So,
That open field and whatnot back up above the property, that's all still.
that's still available. Yep, the grass area,
Yeah.
yep, by the horse barn. Yep.
Fire construction.
They're gonna work on accommodating the fair selection.
I think they'll work it out. That's okay.
Anything else?
No, I don't think nothing important. I guess.
Teresa?
As you probably did see that EMS wants to know if we would like them to come to our meeting to present or ask for their appropriation, or if they can just send a letter. The other counties, there's 10 of us are in this EMS area, or 11, one of the two, are mainly just sending letters for asking for their appropriation, but they are willing to come if we want them to. I personally can vouch that they're doing a good job with what they're giving money for, because seatbelt money has really gone down. So, but let me know, because I said I would let him know if we want him to come. I had the extension meeting that one evening to talk about the MOU that we have to sign for our contract with them. And I think they're gonna send copies of it. I don't know if we got it or not. Okay, we will get copies of it. And there again, all the counties in the state have to sign with extension for that. And they also have their budget, and we actually lowered it something because of the intern. We cut from what, $400 to $200, because Fillmore County is not going along with it. So we just cut ours in half. I think that was the only reduction. And did we also cut the fair intern? Yeah, we did. We cut the fair intern from 200 to 100 hours.
But that's still an addition, because there wasn't a fair intern before.
Well, Bob Scanlon said his daughter did it.
That was when Jean left. She filled in to help out in that area as an intern because we didn't have anybody hired at the time. So,
Okay.
but this was an addition they were requesting because of the savings of the budget
Okay,
on how they compute because we were actually only paying Mike a little less in the budget what he actually gets because they use their
Mhm.
pool. The university used their pool. So with that savings, they wanted a 200-hour intern for Rebecca plus the 400 for Mike,
Right.
which we budgeted 200 for Mike.
Mhm.
And they wanted another 200 from Fillmore County, but they didn't get. But last year they got a budget or a grant to help out with tractor safety. So they got a 200 hours out of that. So,
Right.
but yeah, so what we did is instead of giving her the 200, we worked it in and gave it basically a 300 for everything to hopefully one person can help with 200 for Mike. And that same
100 for-
person can help with another 100 for Rebecca during fair time,
Right.
which still kept our budget in line a little bit. It was actually a little less, not a lot.
Yes, it actually came out a little bit less.
Yeah.
And
Because,
all these people, these hours you're talking about, that's not just strictly fair hours.
no, it is basically 6 weeks, I think, in the summer over fair.
That's what this is probably going to happen with this 100 hours to help her
Mhm,
out during
yes.
fair time.
Maybe.
And
day camps.
Mike's intern hours is through from January because these are college kids that they get.
It means something.
Yeah, and they help out from January to August in that time frame.
And
This
this,
prep work for the fair.
Prep work, and I don't see.
For the 100 hours for Rebecca will probably be, yeah.
and day camps, I guess, the reason for helping her with some of the summer camps for the kids.
But it's not 100% fair.
No, no,
Other programs that they
No,
have are
it's not. No. Big, yeah.
We gotta go out there 12th of July, go for 4-H work day or something, and that's 1,200 kids coming up for that. So it's, I mean, she probably has a lot of stuff like that.
Mhm.
Safety camps. And tractor farm safety, they have them camps.
So they are going to, they too offered to come to us to present their budget in person. Or else they'll send it through Carol and Donna, and we can just look at it and approve it. But theirs is a regular budget, it's not an appropriation. Then I did have the solid waste annual meeting, and some of the prices are going up now for the recycled materials. Mattresses are actually going down, their need for a mattress recycling, but the price did not go down because people over COVID got online foam beds, but they're usually only good for 6 years, so then they order another one. So we might have some kind of
I'm hearing about them.
increase there. We're watching that, but their revenue actually went up from 13 million to, and their expenses were 12 million. So it was a good report. Excel always gives a big report on, they cover 8 states, a lot of wind energy, working nuclear medicine, energy. And it was a long meeting, but it was very interesting. And they're also working, last year we went along with them for that recycler because it was cheaper for us to work with them, and they put in everything for Houston County that we wanted. And they'll be doing that again this fall. We have to consider if we want to go along with them. Or Rick used to do our own and have local printers, but this actually is a big cost saving to work with LaCrosse County. But we get LaCrosse County information too then. But, so that was good. And then I had the 2 personnel meetings, which we've already discussed. That's basically it.
On that lacrosse. And program, the printing. When you get the lacrosse information and they put ours on it too.
Mhm.
Do you know how much that would cost versus if we had it done here? Just our.
I think Holly probably has all that information, what we paid last year. I actually went with Julie to pick up all the recyclers 2 years ago.
we had it
And
done
she had
right,
figured it was a lot cheaper for us
to do
to
it.
have lacrosse do it
They get, what do they bring
because of the
in?
amount.
They bring equipment in down in Houston then for us to use, or how, how does that work?
This is the recycler magazine or pamphlet. It goes to everybody.
Newsletter, yep.
Yeah. Newsletter. Well, once every 2 years, we do it. It's what we have been doing it every other year.
Did they talk about that twice a year program? That, they come over to our sites twice a year for the hazardous waste.
We did not talk about that, but we talked about it with Carol after our last meeting. And we, last year or 2 years ago, I think we got 19,000 on hazardous waste. No, not the, what do you call it? The income that Houston County got for, I can't think of the word right now, and I'm sure I have it here somewhere. Anyway, that's what goes toward the costs, and the cost is usually 4,000 or 5,000 each time, and they comes out of that 19,000 that we get from them. So it's really,
But they're not gonna do that next year.
I was under the impression that they weren't going to come over.
Lacrosse County is not gonna come over and do the hazardous collection next
Okay.
year. They didn't mention that.
they
at
didn't
all.
mention that at the annual meeting, no. But when we have our regular meeting, I can quiz them about that, because we can take our hazardous waste there anytime. It's
Well,
like
that's, I
5 days a week.
we gotta think about that, is if that's something we want to continue as on ourselves, to have us do it instead of seeing how Lacrosse County's not gonna come over and do it.
If we don't collect it, then people just have to bring it to the cross.
Right, right.
And I have directed some people to Lacrosse County,
Mhm.
like that gentleman that was late. He had to, he
Yeah.
had it all loaded up, so he called me and I said, take it to Lacrosse County.
So I see you give Holly a raise. Is she running the solid waste center? Is she in charge of
Supposed to
solid?
be.
So she's running the solid waste center, correct?
Mhm.
We have an environmental services director who is the ultimate responsible.
Right.
person. Interim, but she is the responsible.
Amelia is. Yes, she's,
So Amelia's over Holly.
Yes.
because she has to do the budget.
But I think for all practical purposes, manage.
Yes.
She's a manager without a title.
What else you got?
That's it.
Eric,
I got pretty much covered everything I did.
Juliet, moving to you.
Couple of things. Between now and next week, I'd like to find out the number of vacancies we have in all the different departments. Where are we at? And what full staff would be, and what, if we're short here, I'm finding out different numbers. I'd like to have that number available so we can look at things. The other thing, and during our department head meeting last week, there's a lot of discussion. Not everybody was there, but the Freeburg Bridge is done. That was from Brian down there, and just approach work left. Appraisals are being redone. A couple of little things. Publication, Rob mentioned the county fair publication is going to be put in both papers, Fillmore in August. And then we had a little discussion about the department head meetings staying Zoom perhaps. To come up here for, say a department head has to come into the building for an in-person meeting and then has to get some information. Perhaps during those, which are non-public meetings, would it be possible, or what's the thought process of having Zoom? Then Eric doesn't need to come in for when he has his cup home, and Greg or whoever. There was this discussion that Zoom seems to be working for that type of meeting, being a non-public, so on. I don't know if we need to act on it, or if it's a thing that's procedural, or if it's a consensus. That's what's talked about.
I think there could be a consensus because it's
Yeah.
not a public decision making. It's just an informational meeting. There's only two commissioners that goes, so
Mhm.
I think,
by consensus, we could change that.
and it
We
would,
did Zoom doing that the month before.
Yeah.
Worked fine.
Yeah.
Everybody could see expressions and everything.
Yep.
It was a good meeting.
And then, like I say, it's sometimes they're very short. You know,
Yeah.
so, I mean, for somebody to come in all the way from wherever they're at, their office at, and or whatever, so. I just thought I'd throw it out, because it seemed like during our discussion, there was feeling that it'd be a good idea to try it, and if it doesn't work, then we can say, hey, by the way, it didn't work, let's go back to the person.
Yeah.
What's the consensus to continue Zoom for
Yes.
department head?
I think we could do Zoom either way, whatever way if you
If
want.
somebody wants to come in person, fine.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I'm in favor of Zoom. I mean, it's kind of nice when you got a department head and she's sitting in her office and you need to know something. She's got her hand right there to give you an answer. I kind of like that part. Being that it's not a public meeting and, you know,
That was the thought process of the group.
maybe I'm thinking wrong here.
Good idea.
That's it.
anybody got anything else?
Do you have a date for that cell phone meeting?
Not yet.
You let me know. We should probably attend that.
Is there any public comment?
I got one question.
Never mind. Back up.
I wish Tess would have been here, but the steps, do you know anything about Bob, where that?
I don't know where we're.
On the steps, is that what you're being?
Yeah.
She did comment with you, right?
Okay.
Okay.
So now we'll have them available for a review before the next one.
Before they're published, yep.
I'll ask for public comment. We'll see what anything on the screen. Donna, is there anybody in the public on board?
No, there's not.
Okay. Papers are here, Carol's here, so I'm assuming there's no public comment. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, we need the whole motion at the same time. The motion made and seconded to adjourn, further discussion.
I need to let EMS know whether they should come in on such a consensus. No,
I don't think they have to come to it.
we didn't need a motion on that. I just wanted consensus.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.